Hey guys, this is AV from the band Abduction. I've been asked to show you some my top 10 black metal records. So I'm going to run you through some stuff from my collection. The first thing to say is that I am not any authority on black metal, on what black metal is or isn't, and nobody is. And if you think you are the problem. To me, this music has always meant freedom to create anything you like, really. So this is not going to be necessarily a tour through Norway in the 90s or a tour through anywhere in particular. There's some stuff from across the world, but the first thing I want to show you is Beherit, Drawing Down the Moon. I've got this lovely picture disc. I'm not a huge picture disc fan, but this one is too cool to ignore. It is a classic album from the Finnish black/death/electronic band Beherit. They were like 16 or 17 when they recorded this album, and it sounds horrendous. A lot of crossover into the sort of bestial war metal trends and things like that as well, but this was probably one of the most important experimental black metal albums of the 90s. Yeah, fucking killer. Second record I want to show you is Black Salice, Banished from Time. This came out about 5 or 6 years ago and blew my mind. This guy is sort of leading the way in the raw black metal side of things. There's just indistinguishable amounts of energy in there that are just melodies that creep out from the ether. It's a very hard listen. It's not. If you're looking for an introduction to black metal, this is not the place to start. This is in the deep end. But I love his aesthetic. I love his message. I think he is a one-man band as well, so I have some affinity with that, having started by myself. Just check it out, man. It is a killer record, very inaccessible. If you can sit through the whole of that, then you're probably going to be fine through most extreme music. Gonna start going towards Norway in the 90s, as I said I wouldn't. There's a couple of Norway 90s bands in there, but this is Thorns. This is a guy called Snorre from Norway, and this album features vocals by Zaster from Satyricon. Thorns started off as a very, very cult underground Norwegian black metal act. There's like a release with no drums on it. There's a lot of tape releases and things out there to explore, but this is the main kind of full album that Snorre did. Criminally underrated, really. This album is really spacey and bizarre in places, and quite industrial in places too. And it really kind of opened my mind up to different textures in black metal when I heard it, 20 years ago or something, when I first got my hands on it. Very pleased to own that on record. That is by Peaceville. It's a recent reissue from Peaceville, but a killer album. This is like the Norway trio. So classic album. There's been plenty of people that have long spouted the virtues and the amazing qualities of this album. It's a very important album. I think we all know why. The stories behind the characters and Burzum alongside it have been documented in films plenty of times and books across the world. But yeah, Mayhem, De Mysteriis, Dom Satanus. Easily one of the greatest black metal albums of all time. Never gets old, man. I never get tired of listening to this album. I've been listening to this album for about 20 years and I still put it in rotation. Euronymous was definitely onto something in his playing style, and the influence of that is very much evident in the world of music. So it had to be there. It had to be in the list. Dark Throne. Obviously, another one, very well known, interesting band, again, part of the whole scene, the Norway scene, where it all began. This is a picture disc version of Under a Funeral Moon. I don't know why there's nothing much to look at. It's just black and white, but it's a picture disc. And this thing was one of they call it the unholy trilogy, don't they? So Under a Funeral Moon, Transylvanian Hunger, and A Blaze in the Northern Sky. Those three are the three Darkthrone albums I like. I've got lots of friends that are into the more speed metal and the more D-beat stuff. And Soulside Journey, the first album, is of course a great death metal album. But for me, it starts and ends with those three albums. I can take or leave anything else they've done. They were fucking ghost noises when they made this, and it's just great, man. It's just great. There's again, a really important album from an important time in music. Which one's this? Very dark cover, but Behexen, Nightside Emanations. There are not so many bands nowadays that manage to do the might of Satan and put that across in their music anywhere near as well as Behexen do. Lots of bands try and many fail, but Behexen, pure satanic might in this. It's big riffs. The most elite people will probably pick a different album, but for me, it's a fucking killer album, man. It's start to finish. It's very varied, and this has got classic tracks like We Burn with Serpent Fire and Circle Me and Shining Death. The fucking organ intro on this is just amazing. Classic church organ type horror spooky music, done really well. I had a job picking which Bloodthirst Nord album to include on this list, so this is the one I picked out. To be honest, I just pulled it out because I could have picked any Bloodthirst Nord album. I fucking love the guy from Bloodthirst Nord, Vindisfal, and his creative mind and his creative output. He's, if you've never heard of him before, you need to check out his body of work. Bloodthirst Nord have a lot of albums. There are 2 trilogies, and there are so 3 albums. There's 2 times 3 albums, and then there's a bunch of other albums. Hallucinogen came out the other year, was on loads of people's end year lists and things like that. But that's the more melodic side of things that he's done. He's very clever and very good at carving space and developing atmosphere to the point where it drags you into somewhere which is completely nightmarish, and I'm very, very, very jealous of him. He's incredible. This album is Fathers of the Ice Age. This is just probably the coolest cover of his. I don't know where that picture's from. I'm not quite sure, but this came out on Debima Morte, which is a great record label. So, moving on. No record collection of black metal would be complete without some Celtic Frost. Obviously, founders of the genre, proto black metal. I could have picked any other, apart from Cold Lake, I could have picked any other Celtic Frost album, but this one is my favourite Celtic Frost album, To Megatherion. This album for me is the culmination of the idea of what Tom G. Warrior was trying to get across. I know he's changed over the years and he's done different things, but the first few years of Celtic Frost come to this point. That's how I see it. This has got the Geiger cover, which that very famous relationship Tom and G had with Geiger, which carried on through to his other bands. This particular edition is a big fat reissue by EMG, but the original came out in Noise, of course. This is when BMG basically bought the rights to Celtic Frost, and they made this big fancy reissue. It's got this gigantic book here with it as well, with all sorts of liner notes and stories and bonus tracks. There's an entire disc of bonus material. So, very important album for lots of people, not just black metal. A lot of the punk scene, a lot of the D-beat stuff was influenced a lot by Celtic Frost as well. So, very important album. Needs to be on everyone's lists. Still sounds a little bit dated today, but it should be in everyone's rotation because it is absolutely fucking killer. Now, I'm going to upset some black metal purists here with Woods of Ypres. Woods of Ypres were a Canadian doom black metal melodic band. This is not strictly black metal, but I think it falls underneath that umbrella, and this is one of my favourite albums of all time. I'm a big fan of Woods of Eat, and rest in peace, David Gold, who sadly died in a car crash just before this album came out. This was completed and he was driving home for Christmas, I believe, to his mum's, and was in a car accident and sadly died. He never got to see the fruits of his labour on this album, so to speak. So he's a very emotional writer. These are albums, this album and the Green Album are essentially sort of like catalogues of his misery and in terms of his relationships. The Green Album's sort of like a divorce biography. It's very sad, and this is the album after that, which is equally as sad. I think it's a slightly better album, but the Green Album is a great album too. Kiss My Ashes Goodbye, Career Suicide is not real suicide, Death is not an exit. He constantly sung about his death, his impending doom, and sadly died before the album came out, which is a real tragedy. But the story behind the album, I think, is enough to make people go, I better check that out. So check it out. It is heavy, it is slow and fast, it's very melodic, but I think it falls under the black metal category. So if you don't think that's true, then go fuck yourself. One of the first kind of rawest black metal albums that I ever listened to, apart from like the Dark Throne and Beherit stuff, that was a more newer band, was Zaster. And I own most of the Zaster records in one way or another. This is Nocturnal Poisoning, which is my favourite Zaster record. There are plenty of other Zaster records in the collection. Some are not great, if I'm honest, towards the end. But this, to me, I picked this up in a record shop on CD, actually, initially, 20 years ago. And it's a great example of when you used to just go and browse CDs or tapes or LPs, and you'd buy something because the cover looked cool. It had a different cover to this, actually. But I looked at the song titles and the cover and thought, that sounds fucking miserable. I will probably identify with this, and the rest is history. I've now got nearly every Zaster release in there. I will eventually own everything. If anybody wants to sell me their copy of the Zaster Leviathan split, we can have a conversation. The very last record that I want to show you is probably my favourite black metal record album of all time, and that is the self-titled Emperor record. It's not strictly an album, it's an EP really. It's a bunch of, this one here includes all the rehearsal footage and stuff on the end as well. Don't come at me with Prometheus from Emperor. Don't come at me with any of the prog shit. Emperor got it right with this one. This is recorded on a 4-track, I think, or a 6-track or something. And it just sounds so fucking evil. So like, I mean, you need to just absorb yourself in this kind of music, and this is the perfect album to get into that more raw stuff. It's got Eye on the Black Wizards on it, which is a staple black metal track. It's on every playlist. Has been for 25 years. So yeah, Ishan, I'm a big fan of Ishan, and I do like his progressive stuff. But if you're talking Emperor, this is the Emperor that I like. That is black and white covers, black, white, red. That's all it needs to be, really. It doesn't need to be anything more pretentious than that. Just fucking evil riffs, man. Icy evil riffs. I was going to show you very quickly. I don't have it on vinyl, so this is a tape, but this is another one of my favourite albums. This is Drudk. I don't know how you pronounce it because I'm not Ukrainian. Drudk, which is Roman Sienko from Hate Forest. This album is Blood in Our Wells. I've never owned it on vinyl, but I will do at some point. Blood in Our Wells, of course, is more like they did a lot of atmospheric stuff. They're very much an atmospheric black metal band, if you want to put the couple of adjectives on it. Big sounding, landscapey stuff. Blood Now Wells is a little bit more of a little bit more sort of classic rock and the solos and things like that, but such an interesting listen from start to finish. It's Ukraine is obviously in the news a lot right now. These guys are very proud of their homeland and have constantly fought for independence from Russia, and there's a whole couple of hundred years of history behind all of that argument that I don't know enough about, but I respect Zurich, I respect the music they make, and glory to Ukraine. Thank you.